is that you should think for yourself. And I think when I look back on my own trajectory, the mistake that it's hard to know whether I would do it differently. I might still go to college and law school, but a mistake I made was never thinking about what the purpose of it was or why I was doing it. It was just this automatic thing that you did because you were told if you did it, you'd have all these options that would get created, and it would all sort of automatically work out on its own. And in retrospect, I would have tried to think harder about why I was doing it and where I saw it going.
Because this would be a familiar story if you had dropped out of Stanford and become a billionaire. But you kind of played it much straighter than Steve Jobs educationally. Was there a moment when you sort of accumulated 2 or however many degrees when you thought, this is all completely pointless? Did you have a moment of doubt about the education that you had excelled at?
Well, I think there was a moment of doubt at the point when I got onto Wall Street, and you realized that it was basically like this never-ending tournament, and the tournament just keeps going on and on, and once you realize that the tournament's not over in high school and it's not over in college and it's not over after that, it forced me to ask more questions about, was this the correct tournament? Was there time to do something different? And I do think that's one of the misconceptions. So one of the big questions about education is what sort of a good is it? Is it an investment decision, a consumption decision? I think most people think of it as an insurance product, where you're buying insurance to protect yourself from falling through the cracks in our society. I think even that's problematic because we should be asking why there's so many big cracks rather than how do I protect myself from it. But the reality is that it's mostly just a tournament, and you have to win the tournament. You have to be realistic about winning the tournament, and the kind of speech that people probably do not give at Harvard, and this is where I think even Harvard is probably wrong, would be, or at Brown or any other university, would be, freshman orientation. Congratulations, you won the last round of the tournament, and now it's going to just get much harder. And you better redouble the effort because there are a lot of people who are ahead of you, and if you can't see them, they're so far ahead of you that you can't even see them. And if you were to try to give a version of that speech, I don't think you would last very long as president of any university. Even a much lesser version of that would probably get you booted.
I want to hear that speech in full, but let me take another question from the floor.
Good evening. Tony Wagner, the first Innovation Education Fellow at the Technology and Entrepreneurship Center at Harvard. It's a follow-up to the last conversation. I've just finished researching and writing my 5th book called Creating Innovators, the Making of Young People Who Will Change the World. So I'm going to press you for a little more depth on response to that last question. What are the most important things we can do as parents, as teachers, as mentors, and as employers to encourage and incent young innovators?
Well, I would say, the educational question, I would say, is that people, the best reason to learn is because you're interested in the subject matter and there's some value in it. And so I would...
Intrinsic motivation, then, as opposed to winning the tournament?
Intrinsic motivation. So I think one of the very interesting things with this program we started with the 20 students under 20 was that a number of them had actually already finished college, and they'd actually skipped a number of grades. And so I think the test for parents who have talented students is whether they would encourage their students to skip as many grades as possible. And if you think of education as a tournament, then you're not going to have your kids skip grades because you want your kids to knock out the other kids on the Harvard application process. If you think of it as learning, you will encourage your student to skip as many grades as possible. So that would be, educational advice would be, to the extent you're able to skip grades, you should skip as many as possible.